I am your host, Bryant, and I'm joined by my brothers Keith, Danny, and Steve. We're your waiters, serving you accountability and truth. We now bring you to our program, already in progress. Welcome to the Iron Table, where iron sharpens iron, so should men sharpen men. As you heard, I'm your host, Brian Gadine. I've brought to the table tonight my brothers Keith and Steve, and I think we're expecting Danny sometime later. But hey, any time is a good time when Danny shows up. We are. It's been a while. It has been a minute since we've been able to record. Life just keeps lifing. Kind of took the summer off to recuperate, to reflect, reconnect with our families. We have not neglected them, but we reconnected them. School's over, so we all of us had some, pretty sure, some summer project to do. Just recently, little guy turned 9, took him to New York for his birthday. All he wanted to do was ride the train, so we were fortunate enough to be able to accommodate him. Hopefully he enjoyed himself. It was not cheap, but it was an experience, and just glad that he got to do it. So just take a moment, kind of catch people up, man. Steve, what's been going on with you?
Bought some toys. I've been actually really just thinking about how blessed I am, as well as reminding other people, clients, about how blessed they are, even in times of when you think things aren't really going right with yourself or whatnot. So, just it's been kind of a slow motion summer, and just kind of a summer of definitely reflecting and trying to refocus myself into, preparing myself for next year. Definitely have a lot of plans of things that I want to do and see and fulfilled, and just preparing myself, and definitely centering myself too. I definitely like to tell people, when things are going really well for yourself, keep your head on the swivel, because that's when the devil definitely will come knocking at your door, and that's definitely
True.
very true for, especially with couples as well. When things are going really well, that's when temptation definitely lurks around the corner too as well. So definitely stay prayed up and make sure that you're communicating with your peoples too as well. So like I said, it's been slow motion this summer.
All right, Deacon Jones.
Yo, I've been busy. It's usually during the summer months. Sometimes work dies down. It's been the opposite. Work has actually picked up, which I'm not complaining, because again, like Steve said, that's my favorite word, blessed. It is a blessing to be busy, and then naturally, kids, graduation, parties, just everything that normally happens, just summer planning, and but now it's time to prepare for everybody to go back to school. I'm looking at the stores already got back to school supplies already out. Now, naturally, I'll be like, man, they cutting summer short. They rushing it. But no, not today. I'm like, get these kids out my house. Get these kids back to the schoolhouse where they need to be, so my utility and my grocery bill can go back down. Come with y'all kids. So I'm just enjoying the summer. Actually, I'm enjoying them being home some days. It's we don't often get a chance to just do things during the week, so we've been able to to hang out when I'm not working, and so it's been good.
I would say for me, summer's the opposite. I work from home, so when I work from home, it's usually my me time. But being married to a teacher, having a kid that's in school, there's no me time. It's we time. We flip it over. And July is a busy month. Their birthdays are back to back. When we try to have a trip, I know May, June, we all celebrated a birthday, so I'm thankful, to hit that 46. Used to think that 45, 40 was old till I got to it, and I was like, that's not old.
40, woo, gosh,
but a lot of stuff that we remember, It's interesting because I mean, just a moment ago, Steve and I were talking about Jodeci, and I mean, there's songs. Was it talking about take my money, my house, and my car just for one hit of you? Now the songs don't say that. You know, they ain't begging. They straight to the point. Let me grab your butt. Let me grab your butt, and that's it. That's all they say. Let me grab your butt.
That's all they say.
Let me grab. Well, I'm trying to at least be correct. Let me grab your butt. But it works for some people. Some people it works for. But back in the day, you used to understand what that song was. You used to know it used to be able to kind of put your emotions into it. Either you was begging, songs were what? Begging, pleading, or telling the woman, hey, this is what I got. So you could maybe you'll choose me over the rest of the guys. Either I'm at least emotionally sensitive, or I got the money in order to supply all of your fantasies. But now, let me grab your butt. Let me grab your chest. Let me grab your butt. But it works. Just for the new age relationships, it works.
It works until somebody don't want it, and then all of a sudden now it's
Harassment.
Harassment, right? It's all cute and funny. It's all cute. It's all cute and fine and dandy until But it's crazy because our kids are seeing this or teaching this, and a lot of times you'll see YouTube clips or TikTok clips where parents are smiling and laughing about maybe their daughter or their son doing saying something maybe inappropriate or sexually inappropriate or whatnot. They think it's funny and they put a clip up, but it's like, okay, now when they grow up to be a deviant or what they would say a whore, now all of a sudden, oh wow, how can you be doing this X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, you're kind of breeding your kid to think that this is okay.
But what is inappropriate now? I mean, isn't that based on the flavor of the day morality? Like what we thought was cool, our parents was like, oh, that's nasty. Like, remember the song The Butt? All she was doing was bending over, just
oh my goodness. I remember when that song came out. That was, oh my goodness, the reaction from the adults. And I feel betrayed because I grew up and became an adult. And I listened to music from the 60s and the 70s. And while the butt was more direct, like the young people's music is now, when I listened to some of that music of the 60s and 70s, it wasn't as prevalent, but they had some cuts that were like, well, no, once you figured out, I will say that they didn't blatantly say a lot of stuff, but once you figured out what they were talking about, like, y'all nasty.
Yeah. It's always been nasty. Yeah, it's always been nasty.
Nasty says. I mean, what? 2 Live Crew is probably PG now, right?
Probably. I don't know. I don't know because you go back and listen to that. Ooh-wee.
I'm not grown enough.
You're not grown enough for 2 Live Crew.
Not for 2 Live Crew. No, I'm still not grown enough.
Oh, okay. It's amazing as we get older. It's like you said, the songs that we grew up on. We was talking about Silk. Yeah, I can't. I won't even say the stuff I was saying because only Steve could hear me, and I was like, feel kind of weird reading off lyrics, and yeah, that face right there. I thought I was on speakerphone. Hear me.
Yeah, like, I'm glad I missed that part.
He was like, "No, it's just me." I was like, "I'm gonna stop."
It's just me and you, brother. I'm gonna ask you to stop reading.
Yeah, things are different. So, I'm going to kind of pivot. This is a conversation that I wanted to have with us probably before we went on our hiatus. And it was relevant then, and I'm hoping that it's still relevant now. I'm going to post it. I'll read it for you, Steve. Why are men so reluctant to go to church? Now, growing up, in the say Adventist community, there was a lot of men in church. They were married, but there was a lot of males. The deacons ran the church. They held it down. You couldn't spend that much time out in the halls. And nowadays, it looks like it's a lot more women, um, a lot less men. There might be 5 guys doing just about everything, from being the deacons to, uh, I guess, leading out. But when did the shift happen where church seemed to be more geared towards women than it was like kind of straight down the middle? And have you even noticed that? I know we've had to deal with the pandemic, and of course, you have online, which makes things a little harder to wake up and go into the building. You have kids. If you have kids, it takes a lot more time and effort to get them ready. I remember we had to being Adventist, you had to do most of the prep work before sunset. And so all you really had to do was just get up. Your clothes were already ironed. You just put them on. We went to Sabbath school or Sunday school for those who go to church on Sunday, which to me, I think was one of the best parts of church because it was interactive dialogue. And maybe that's it. Maybe because there's a lot less interactive parts of church outside of being sung to, which now has a lot of praise teams instead of choirs. But from either one of your viewpoint, and you've seen it or maybe you haven't, why does the church just seem to be a little like less men in the church? And is there anything that could fix it? Okay. Yeah.
I'll jump in because I've actually looked at some numbers, and once upon a time, I'm gonna go back a little bit further, all the way to the civil rights movement. There were a lot of men in church because church did not only serve as a place of worship, but it was a meeting place that was functional for, like you said, other social activities, other learning, or just it served as it was multifaceted. So there is a big dip in the decline of Black men in church after, ironically, the assassination of Martin Luther King. So the movement's over. Martin Luther King is dead. A lot of men are struggling with depression, anger, and anxiety. And so they stopped going to church. Like, why keep going to this place? And for what? What's going to be, the things that came with all of that. So, like you said, we saw there was I'll call it some type of spiritual awakening revolution through all. I mean, you had your Jimmy Swaggarts and all your different big name preachers. And so you had all these big name preachers come through 70s, 80s. Like, again, there was a rise again around that 80s, 90s, and then we dropped back off. And we're all the way here now. I'm going to speed up to 2024 and get to the point. We got to a place where, again, what, in a nutshell, what is the purpose of a man at church? Why should he come? I will say this, a lot of times where we're not active or involved, we're not interested. I think that the things that kind of bring us out, most of us feel like as it relates to studying, or I can study the Bible myself at home. In 2024, I can turn on a sermon and watch somebody preach, probably better than the pastor that you go to listen to this on the weekends. So if there's no place for me to serve and there's no place for me to participate and feel like I'm a part of what's going on, what is the incentive? What is the purpose for me being here? And I hear that and see that from a lot of men. So what, again, for churches who are trying to get people, trying to get people to become acclimated. I've been talking to churches on how to make people feel more acclimated, how to make people feel more welcomed and part of the process, and not somewhere they just come and give all their money. Some people, because they're, give all their money from some churches, and then just leave feeling more empty than when they came. So, you ask, why aren't men coming or staying? To me, it's because they don't feel like they have a place. Some churches are very emotional settings, which is nothing wrong with us getting attacked. There's nothing wrong with us tapping into our emotional sides, but if that's all that there is, then again, that's not. It won't ever be for us. We need, as men, we need more than that. Well, even women need more than that. So, but I think we will come, we will fill up on air and leave feeling full, but we'll be empty if
So,
we.
so you mentioned, sorry, but you mentioned like when Martin was around. Have we, as a people, reached a point where we no longer have a struggle, a reason to come to like a common goal to come together? You mentioned, like, I remember, they said you find a good woman in the church. I was fortunate to find my wife as the Sabbath school teacher at church. But now with the invention of the internet, I know you really don't have to go. You can find somebody online. With, like you said, the fact that you can listen to a more dynamic speaker online, is it just the internet, or is there something that is missing? Because I hear you say there isn't something for us, but does that mean that we need to create what that is? And if so, what is that?
Yes, we can't expect anybody else to create, because at this point, most people don't even know. So I wouldn't expect anyone to create something that they not familiar with or could not understand per se. I mean, they can help, they can support, but if
So,
there
for
is,
example, there's a men's ministry.
correct.
I've seen where, in at least the last event that I might have heard about was, oh, come over and watch the Super Bowl. I don't really care for football like that. But what I did enjoy was basketball, church league basketball, something that was active, some type of common goal of trying to win. So much so that I'm trying to start my own team, and I've already tabbed Keith as a starting forward. So I need you to get back into game shape.
Okay, I'm trying to tell you, I'm ready.
So that's what you want.
Okay.
And Steve, you can get some of this.
I'm gonna give my solid 3. I'm
Look,
3 and out. You gonna come and shoot?
Football is
and
my
out.
strength, brother. I can
Yeah,
play some defense, but football is my strength.
we were not allowed to play football
I
growing
do
up.
flag.
Oh,
I ain't get. Yeah, I do some flag
And
football.
I say that now until the first hit. And I'm like, okay, nah, you know what? I'm every bit of this age now. This ain't fair. This ain't fair.
Yeah.
Y'all playing too much. This ain't fair. But you know what? I actually and I'm sorry, I had a bit of a situation going on that I had to take care of while you was asking that question. I think that from what I've been hearing and what I've been seeing too is that there's a lot of hurt that goes on in the church. And I think for one, how can I say this? I think in one sense that a lot of men sometimes see through a lot of BS that goes on. And I don't want to sound a certain way, but I think that
Just go on.
women are a little bit more susceptible to how can I say this? Not just the BS, but kind of sometimes, brainwashing sometimes too by leaders that should not be in the church. And I say that to say that I've heard a lot of instances where and just like with therapy, a lot of times women are the ones that want to initiate couples therapy. Women are a lot of times the ones that want to hey, let's all go to church, X, Y, and Z. So a lot of times they are the ones looking for some hope, looking for answers, X, Y, and Z, and get caught up in a lot of the BS that goes on in the church. A lot of times men not only just see through it, but sometimes they just don't want to deal with it because as men we see what other men do, right? And I give for an example that I've heard about a case of where a man was seeking counsel for some marital problems and issues that were going on at his in his marriage, and he went to go seek help from the pastor, X, Y, and Z. They were going, and before you know it, there was some, hey, I need to see your wife for some some side sessions and whatnot. And this particular this particular preacher, they were doing couples counseling with the preacher's wife. So it's like 4 of them. But at a certain point in time, oh no, there's some certain things we need to hash out with you. So long story short, before you know it, the man's wife who he was trying to get help for, she ends up pregnant. Guess who's the father? The
Oh,
pastor.
yeah.
So guess what? Pastor
No,
doubles down.
yeah.
Pastor doubles down on this and says, you know what? I'm gonna divorce my wife. And guess what? Now we getting married. And, and then they had some more kids. And guess what? The church stood behind every bit of it.
Wow.
So, to be honest with you, there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of distrust that goes on in the church. But I think that from the get go, us as black men, we kind of distrustful in the first place. So it's like when we see some of these characteristics and this BS that goes on in a lot of church, we just like, I don't want to go. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it sucks to say it, but it really sucks to see that it's really true.
So how do you explain how do you explain that to your significant other who says, but I want to go to church, and church church means a lot to me.
Mhm.
Now I know there's a difference between Christianity and and church. There's a different. You don't have to always go to church in order to have a godly mind or
Mhm.
or godly movements. But how do you? I'm not going to say how do you get out of it, but how do you express where it doesn't come across that he just doesn't want to go, but there's a legitimate
Concern.
I express a legitimate concern, or express it in a way that it reaches pink ears and pink eyes instead of sounding as if it's just blue. I mean, y'all.
I think communication got to be the key. And it doesn't just start with. I mean, it doesn't just end or start with church. You have to communicate with your spouse about everything that you're feeling, everything that you're thinking. And when we're talking about communication, this should be the person that you do not feel like. Give me 1 second. I'm in a meeting, man. Jeez. You know what? Oh boy. Good old Detroit, right? Can't do nothing by yourself. Good old Detroit.
Give you their whole life story that don't even know you.
Exactly. But no, this is what I'm saying. You have to communicate with your spouse about everything that is going on with you and how you're feeling, how you're thinking, because at a certain point in time, your spouse is not going to know anything that's going on with you to the point to where you're going to be a stranger. And this is supposed to be the person that you want to that you are going to spend the rest of your life with. The pretty much the only person that comes before this person is God. So why not share your thoughts, your fears, your concerns? I mean, you can share everything else. And I always tell couples this: if you can open up your mouth and spread your legs, or want her to spread your legs, any of that stuff. When we talk about sex, we have no problem of communicate. Hey, this is what I need. This is what I want. So if we can communicate that all the time and let them know when we need that, how come we can't communicate about all things? And that's how it should be, especially when you're talking about a husband or a wife. This is supposed to be your best friend at this point. This is your best friend. So I think communication got to be the key for this. You have to talk to them about your history, your fears, what you want in the church. Hey, what is it that you don't want in the church? All those particular things. It has to be communicated, and you have to have a thoughtful conversation, not just once. This has to be an ongoing thing.
Because communication offers a perspective that your significant other may not see. He or she may not see, like you said, you just may know information that they don't, where no, it's kind of, I like the church, but is kind of messy there, based, because you might know the pastor is or the ushers, or you might know something that makes it a messy church, and you may have, sometimes we as men look for peace, even when we can go to a house of worship. We want peace. A lot of the men most of us don't even want to deal with the messiness at the church. We want to go in, be a blessing, receive a blessing, go home. But there are some people who enjoy getting all into the politics of everything and the messiness of it all. And then some people, no, they They don't want all of that. I know people who told me, I just want to come and worship and go home. I don't want to serve. I don't want to be a part of nothing. I don't want to. I'll make friends or associates for that matter, but they didn't want a deeper level.
So my
So
question to you is that okay? Is that okay?
I think so.
see, okay. So if you want more from it, but you're not putting in more or not putting in, how are you, what are you getting out of it? I mean, you're asking, we're asking for it to be better, but we're
Mhm.
not putting in any tangible resource in order to move it towards better, but we're expecting it to change.
Mhm.
Isn't that crazy?
It's paradox, oxymoron. Doesn't make sense. Yes, I'm hoping that my sickness goes away, but I'm not going to treat it. I'm not even praying about it at this point. I'm just complaining, like most people do
Okay.
with
is
everything.
every is everybody ready at a certain point in time, ready to actually really make a change though? Because a lot of times we talk about things, but are we really prepared to make a particular change that we know we need to make? So
Oh,
sometimes it's all fun and dandy to talk about it. It
Oh
feels
yeah,
good, it
feels good.
sounds good, but
But
when it comes down to actually doing it, when it comes down to doing the work, that's when it's like, oh no, we don't need to do that. And that's why sometimes, one of my pastors, he talks about being, you got church people and you got kingdom people. You know what I mean? Where people live by the word, day in, day out, not just in church. Because it sounds good to do all these things and say all these things in church. But when you actually have to do them outside of church, when it's the most hard, that's when it's the work. And, a lot of times people are lazy when it comes to doing what it is that you really need to do. And a lot of times, sometimes it's our leaders in the church that are very lazy in doing what it is that they need to do in order to lead the people.
yeah.
Because it's one thing to tell people what to do or what they should be doing, but a lot of times people in the congregation are looking at each other like, I know what pastor do. Just how to
Uh-oh.
be in the congregation knowing these particular things, and the pastor is telling people what to do, knowing that he's leading his people astray, which is another point, not another point, but it's something that also boggles my mind. In the Bible, it does speak of God speaking to the leaders, specifically saying, "Hey, to the leaders and the people of the church, let it be known, if you lead my people astray, I'm coming for you first, and you're gonna get it tenfold." Specifically, so at a certain point in time, if you're a pastor and you know this, it's like, man, you playing with God at this point, and forget these human beings down here on earth. You playing with God.
Yeah, but I think some people, when I say they don't care, they don't think, like eternity and heaven is really not a realistic option. So it's like, why do all of this if
Hmm.
there's no guarantee? There's no
Hmm.
guarantee for like we don't know. Honestly, I
You're right.
think our morality, are just the intrinsic nature of man is just to be, buttholes. Just to be whatever. But
Certified Gemini. That's what's up.
but there's a part of us, if we've that is still, or I think the spirit moves in us that says, okay, this is wrong, you need to do right. And
Hmm.
most of the time we try to lean towards doing what is right, knowing that there is no guarantee, but if and
Hmm.
that's where I think where he makes up the difference. If I'm
Hmm.
trying now, if I'm
Hmm.
trying to do the hell in a handbasket, I'm not going to try. I'm going to be
Right.
a butthole to, I think the worst you can do is to widows and children. When you do something with them, he
Hmm.
specifically has said those are who he cares for the most.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's some people that just truly, if they really don't believe that eternity is a realistic goal. They look at what's
So,
going on in the world and like, how could a benevolent, kind God
hmm
allow this to
That's
happen to positive people. But from my reading, my understanding, a lot of the people who were close to God had to go through some trials and tribulations. It was a given. And I believe that's, Satan, for those who believe in him, that he only goes after those who he knows is close to God, and know that he has to even ask God. If you look at the story of Job, he had to go to God and say, hey, Job likes you because of this. God's like, all right, you just can't touch him. He did everything he could. That was a struggle. I mean, you lose all your stuff, your wealth, your family, your friends are questioning, like, what did you do? Because a week ago you was good with God. Now you're
Well,
not.
I think that's
So
the reality for a lot of men, that they are angry with God, whether and has nothing to do with church. It's maybe everything else that has happened in their lives. And so why go to a place to serve somebody who I'm angry with? And sometimes they know it, sometimes they're aware of it, sometimes through talking about it in therapy or just amongst friends, they come to that realization that I'm frustrated with God. And again, I enjoy when
and that's
I
okay.
pull it out of people sometimes, because it feels wrong to say. For some people, it feels sacrilegious to say, because I mean, this is God. But at the same time, when you, like Job, where you feel like you're just going through a Job experience and you losing everything and you don't understand, yes, you become unsure, you become frustrated, you become angry, sad, all these normal human emotions. And sometimes we have to process that. We have to, I'm sure Joseph in the Old Testament, while in prison, he probably had to say, "Okay, God, I had these big dreams of being this big guy. This don't look like my dream." So I'm pretty positive most of us who thought we were going to go out and do the greatest thing, and when it don't happen the way we think, we become frustrated, we become angry, and again, what purpose? Until we figure out what purpose church serves, we feel like we don't have a place in there, because it's like, what is the point? I could go there and again listen to all these sermons and read all these things and connect with all these people who are doing what?
Mm. You know, it's very interesting that this comes up too. And I want to speak to this, but before I speak to it, I want to also talk about what pretty much religion is kind of based upon. And I think God asks of us to be able to best serve Him, is that we have to have faith. I know there is no guarantee, but it's based upon having faith that God is saying that He's going to do, that He's going to do. But I find it very interesting that we're having this conversation, because I do specifically remember talking with people this week about that whole concept of, say, for instance, I do something that I feel like is unforgivable, right? Whether it be, um, stealing, murder, whatever it may be. I feel like I have done something that is unforgivable, and God is not going to forgive me. I'm damned to hell, and I'm going to hell X, Y, and Z, and it's just never. I'm just I'm not forgiven, and that's contrary to what the Bible tells us. That, hey, you know what? You ask for forgiveness, you accept Jesus into your heart. All sins will be forgiven. That's the concept of why Jesus Christ died on the cross. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
We have a lot of people that do not believe that they believe that they're above, and I've had to say to them, like, who are you to be above what God said that He's going to do?
Amen.
Who are
All right.
you? And my thing is, like, well, do you believe God is going to keep your family safe? Do you believe God is going to do this? God's going to bless them. God is going to, wake you up in the morning. All these things that God said He's going to do. It's like, well, yeah. Well, then why is it that you don't believe that God won't do all things that He said He was doing? Why are you picking and choosing?
You can't.
You definitely can't. So my thing is, if you believe God is going to do this, He's going to do all things that He said that He's going to do, and don't pick and choose. Don't be your own worst enemy. So you have a lot of people out here not only being their own worst enemies, but they're hearing other people, other leaders say, "Hey, guess what? This is heinous. You can never be forgiven for this," and they're adopting that ideology instead of listening to what God says themselves.
So, all right. Oh, now he said, okay.
Whoa.
Good fellas.
So, real quick recap, Danny. I asked a question on, why are men reluctant to go to church? So we've gotten to a point where we talked about how men were first at church. Keith had mentioned during like the civil rights movement, there was a movement. So there was action, there was a need, it wasn't just talk. There was, some type of doing. Steve has mentioned that there, just what the Bible says, and just how it's faith, and how men have gone through some stuff, and it really hasn't been addressed. The church really hasn't addressed some of the issues that men go through, because either we've held it or they really don't know how to answer it. But one of the things that just came up was, why are we accepting, people are willing to accept one side of God, but not everything that he does. And so my question is, do people really believe it's just that simple of, if you accept what I have to offer and just let me into your heart, start, let your ways be my ways, or my ways be your ways, and go, like, why won't people just accept that God is very simplistic?
That's
Like
because it's kind of because it's selfish. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's selfish that when we start to think about it, because if you really think about that concept, it's a possibility Hitler can be in heaven. If all sins are forgiven, it's like, well, damn, I did everything I was supposed to do. How did this murderer, how did this rapist, how did they make it into heaven? I did everything I was supposed to do. I didn't do. So it's kind of like selfish. And then again, like you said, it's simplistic. But again, like I had to tell some of my clients this week that, the Bible speaks of, like, hey, I think it's a partner where, I don't know if it's God or if it's the angel or somebody like that is asking about either God's name or the angel's name. And I think God responds, or the angel responds and says, you can't even fathom how to really say my name. You're not able to really understand and get the gist of it. So that kind of lets you know, we as human beings are sometimes outside of the comprehension, maybe right now, of understanding the right. Yeah, we're out of the realm. We're out of the realm of understanding all that stuff. So a lot of times, when as simplistic as it is, that's what it is. And we have to have that faith to just say, hey, guess what? This is what God says. This is, because here's the thing. Again, we'll become our own worst enemies, and sometimes that sounds like that's the devil coming in to talk to us about certain things that God didn't say. That God didn't say, hey, I'm gonna forgive your sins except for if this or God said, you let me into your heart, you forgive, that Jesus died on the cross, X, Y, and Z, all sins are forgiven. So at a certain point in time, we get into ourselves, we feel ourselves, and we lose that faith in what God says. But again, then now we pick and choose, because we have faith that God's going to keep everybody safe, X, Y, and Z, all these other things. But you're going to forgive my sins too? Nah, you're not going to do that. But all this other stuff you're going to do, it makes, again, that's the fallacy of human at that point.
Yeah. I would just kind of come in and kind of deal with in my personal experience, it's oftentimes that we've got a lot of shame issues, and so the church, because of ignorance, seeks to use shame to control the morality of people who are going there. Little knowing that shame is never a tool that God uses. I used to think that guilt and shame were the same thing. It's just like you have to be ashamed when you sin. But no, shame is very unique in Genesis because it has Adam and Eve running and hiding.
And putting on clothes. Covering up.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever there's running and hiding from God, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, how you gonna do that?
Run and hide.
And so the question then becomes, where does shame come from? if it's causing you to run and hide from God, like where does it come from? It's a demonic construct.
Exactly. There we go.
And so when we understand that fundamentally, it reframes how the church is operating. Just because I love how Pastor Darius Daniel says it. He says there's the kingdom's way, there's the church's way, and then there's the world's way. We sometimes think the church is synonymous with the kingdom. That's not always the case. I grew up in a very shame-oriented environment where if you weren't in line, morally speaking, and even still to this day, like they will shame you into
submission.
and not wanting to be. Who wants to be in an environment where the only way that you're acceptable is if you're actually running and hiding from the things that you're struggling with? Guys don't talk as it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So
we just talked. Yep, that's what we just said.
We're not opening up now, and you really think that your shaming me is gonna make it's gonna have the opposite effect. It's gonna push you in that shame cycle where whatever unproductive behavior you're involved in, you're just gonna get pushed back into that, and that's gonna be the hamster wheel that you're stuck on till something breaks that cycle. So I don't know if that's the answer. I see your question here. I think that having more dialogue, creating more spaces where it's okay to not be okay, where people can be real and raw and broken without being shamed, is a big need in most churches.
So, would you say that the churches today still are run with the shame model?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, or fear-based.
It's absolutely fear-based. Every emotion that is not from love is fear-based.
How do you have accountability? And how do you balance accountability and not create a lane of shame or fear or embarrassment? Or is that even something realistic? I guess because I hear what we're saying, and I agree, that there's some levels of shame that are just absolutely ridiculous. But then what is the balance?
Great. Yeah.
Then accountability then turn to remorse? And is remorse and shame the same, or are they different?
Here's my take on this. God always deals with sin the same way. It's Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 18. It's the way God always deals with sin from Genesis to Revelation. Come now, let's reason together. Let's talk about this. Though your sins be I'll make them whiter than snow. Though they're red like crimson, hey, what do you run? Hey, where are you? Why are you hiding? He's always come talk to me about it. He received the prodigal son. He didn't let him finish his pitiful speech. He's always literally like, yo, come reason with me. Adam, where are you? Bro, let's talk.
He's always the initiator of communication.
That is his stance. Woman, where are thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? Okay, like I got you. But I'm not here. The Son of Man didn't come into the world to condemn the world, but he came to save that. It's not the healthy who need the doctor, it's the sick. So in response to Keith's question of okay, where's the balance? The balance is first understanding that we're all saved by grace through faith. And but for it ain't nothing but the grace of God, and I ain't a crackhead. That I'm not out here in the whorehouse. That I'm not over here like just getting ready to jump off a bridge.
Well,
because when life it can push you to that breaking point, and I think we can normalize being at that breaking point, because every great man in the Bible was. Moses was like, you're just gonna have to take me out, God. Elijah was like
Elijah,
Solomon,
Samson,
all of
them. That's what I do love about the Bible.
Even Adam.
It took these men as men who were perfect and never did anything wrong or had any struggles. It gives the hot and cold of every individual in there.
Yeah. And so for me, the part of the solution is having rooms where we can be real and raw and authentic, where we can be broken, where we can,
But the church doesn't have that platform.
What'd you say?
The church doesn't have that platform anywhere.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've seen it. I've actually seen it.
There are some.
Yes,
that's why there are some churches that are thriving to this day because they have it. The average church does not. So if I went into a church and I stood up and said, I relapsed today, I've been sober 10 years and I got drunk today.
Steve is drinking.
What do you think? Like some churches would respond and be, but there are people. Yes, you drunkard. You don't belong in our church.
Or I had a baby and I'm 15.
I was gonna go there next.
They'll kick you out. They'll kick you out. They'll put you. I've heard of stories of them. They'll put you out the church. You're done.
Same day.
So then, how does that then now impression on a young teen and their concept of God? If this is God, I don't want to have nothing to do with this. So this isn't love.
This is played out so many times that it's ridiculous because now she will pass on her ideology of God and the church to this child that she now bore. And there again, you have someone who's growing up feeling they don't need this connection because I saw what they did to me and my mom.
But I know back then that mindset was if we remove the part that offends thee to try to save the rest of the body.
Because that's why it's done. Yes.
But not knowing how important that part of the body still is. And just a long lasting effect. We don't know the influence that certain people, we're now seeing it. Because there's a big age gap in churches for those who were teens in the 90s and the early 2000s who are now parents who probably are like, yeah, I don't need to take my child there. But what I'm saying is that was the reasoning. To try to save the many, you had to release the few.
The concept of cutting off the cancers.
But here's the thing. You only do that when it's not personal. Now, if it's your daughter, or if it's your cousin, or if it's your mama, or if it's your auntie, you gonna want to help them. But when you only do that when it's not personal. So my thing is, we should take everything to be personal. And I look at it to like, hey, when you go past a car accident and you see it's like really bad or whatnot, no, you should feel bad because that could be your people. That could be somebody that you love. That's another human being. People look at other people's situation. Well, not me. Not me. A lot of times, and that kind of moniker goes on, like say, for instance, when certain ailments happen, such as, cancer awareness. A lot of times people don't be on that bandwagon till it happens to them. So a lot of times we got to take ourselves out of separating ourselves and say, oh, not me. Not me. No, you human too. It definitely can happen to you. And it definitely can happen to the people around you. So maybe this person that got pregnant is a test to see from God to see how you going to treat this person, because this might be a situation for you. And I'm going to see if I'm going to bless those around you based upon how you treat other people around you that you may not know.
True.
So here's what I'm saying the solution is. It's in Revelation, I think chapter 12. By the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Now, for a testimony service where you getting all the gory details and everything like that.
I would get ready to ask which testimony service.
Yeah, we can have a whole podcast.
It was on the pipe.
But some of these old people out here, and y'all know what I'm talking about, they be acting like they wasn't out here in these streets.
That part right there. That part right there.
That's how they know. That's how they know. They know. Oh, I know what you're out there doing, and I know what you're doing.
I bet you do, because I saw you there the other day too. You was there.
I used to be there, or I still am.
Right. Yeah. Last week.
So yes,
I'm just there for research.
Somebody told me if I don't get caught, it don't count. I'm sorry, but they was like, well, I did. So if I don't get caught, because again, church situation, his friends got this fellowship, And they were like, well, shouldn't he be going with us? And they were like, well, we didn't see him. And then his philosophy was, yeah, that's right. Y'all didn't. So if I don't get caught, it don't count. So
exactly.
But yes, having empathy and having an understanding of how to handle certain protocol. There are certain things that can be, and only because I've served on some committees, I do think that I've seen some situations where, like Bryant said, in order for the health of the body, this person is not stable or well enough to stay amongst the flock.
They got
and
great
meaning, I'm gonna try a little Johnny this. There was a situation where there was a man who was flirting with everybody's wife. And he had been corrected. He had been, but not by the pastor, by the elder, and a couple of the husbands wanted to touch him up too. He had been talked to. He chilled out for about 6 months. Fired right back up. And I mean, inappropriate, like touching and comments.
Oh no! Oh no! Right. Oh no!
So situations like this,
it escalates because the only now thing that you understand is Smith and Wesson at that point, because that makes no sense.
No, because that makes 500 years ago, been stones to the face.
There you go.
So in this case, again, he had to be this fellow. Well, it wasn't even a thing where he wanted, like they didn't even want to do it, but it was like, we love you, your family, everybody, but you cannot be here and you cannot continue to do this because we don't want to just throw you away, but at the same time, we can't have you here doing what you're doing.
Okay, double standard moment. He gets thrown out, but you're saying the wives got to stay because they follow through with his advances.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but I'm saying the ones that did. Did the church also remove them?
No.
What would happen to them back in the day? Would they get it too? Would they get the stoning too?
They stone everybody. Back in the day,
there we go.
I think they were disappointed when they woke up and they couldn't stone nobody.
Man, look, I like Old Testament God. Old Testament God didn't play.
Them people like who colored outside the line? I did. I see it here. Somebody colored outside the line. Stone them.
This was an unclean lamb. Stone them.
Right. They stoned for. See, that's why I'm glad. Like, listen, y'all ain't got to do that. Relax. We gonna deal with a new way, a different way.
But do you guys think that there is a call for a greater need for checks and balances in church?
That's protocols in church. What's the balance?
There needs to be some protocols, like and go over scenarios. Hey, what happens if we have somebody that is causing chaos with the women amongst the church or with the men amongst the churches? I'm pretty sure that happens too. What is our protocol? What is it that we do? How do we deal with this? Just like each church needs to have its own war room too.
Most of them
because it has to be peace.
Cut them loose. It's most of we ain't even gonna try to figure it out. But some people they cut early.
And some people, like I said,
some people
you're not giving them the tools in order to make correction. You're just saying we don't even want to deal with you.
Okay, well, how many times do we deal with them? Do we give them 3 chances, 3 strikes and you out? We're gonna let the Lord deal with you?
70 times 7.
70 times 70. What is that? 490?
Yeah, no. You messing with the women and the children. Ain't no 70 times.
You got to go. Yeah, that's what I'm just about to say. Until they mess with your wife. Now, ain't no 70 times nothing. No, you got to go.
Right. I know. That's why I said there has to be a balance because it won't always be this lane of, he's just going through some things. Yeah, he about to go through
your wife now. You ain't about to go through your wife now too. Right, now, how you feel now?
So he can't stay. And, I do believe it's about reform. Like again, maybe because of the nature of work that we do, I do believe it is about not just you can't come back here, but here are some places I'm gonna give you some resources to get some help for what you're doing, but also
some resources.
Some
I love
resources.
that word. Some resources.
To another church where you might be okay. It's just old men in that church.
Yeah.
That is
Just, or you can only come to church virtually. We use virtual now. You can get virtually only, brother. We love you, but you gotta worship from a distance, brother.
Oh, watch that chat room. But okay, so to get us back, so the church needs to have a safe space for men to be real, to be raw. They need to, I guess, somehow cut through the fluff and I guess be direct. But what does that really look like? Do you need to hear somebody get up in the middle of church and say, "Man, I used to run through women," or I had a drink this morning, or like, how do you know that this church is going to fulfill your need if you're not going to be vulnerable or watch someone else be vulnerable? Like, how?
I'm actually studying the book of Acts right now, and I think this is a great discussion because we're using the word church rather loosely. And one thing we see in Acts chapter 2, the latter part, I think it's verse 42, it says very clearly that they all came together and had everything in common, and they were constantly coming to break bread. It wasn't a 1 day, 1 hour, doing life together.
Yeah.
And this concept of church just being, we go, we sing some songs, we sit down and hear a sermon, and I'll see you till next week, and we do the same thing over and over again. That's not biblical model for church.
It's not.
That's what America has created and called it. But in actuality, it was the people, the community, the way is what it was called in scripture. And so when we have, to me, answering this question is understanding the need for us to have communities within the body of what we call the church. Because the church isn't the building. The church isn't that 1 hour a week. Church is the people coming together and taking off their fig leaves, so that we can collaboratively get healed. The reason our tear ducts are not underneath our armpits is because when God wants our pain seen, healing happens when that pain is shared. And until we really get into trusting relationships with those who are a part of the
I would say everybody can't see these tears.
Yeah, no, it's not for the public stage. That's not church. Church happens when I'm sitting down eating a meal.
Yeah, I was gonna say that tears don't have to be for everybody. It might be for those 1 or 2 people who have shared the same journey or similar journey.
But here's the thing. This speaks to something like when me and Keith do workshops or whatnot. Why our workshops go so good is because of that one concept of inclusion of everybody, right? And I know you can't do that every single church sermon where you're allowing everybody to speak, but there should be some type of implementation in churches where, hey, you know what, maybe not this Sunday or whatever it may be, but we're going to have a get together, maybe in smaller groups where we're all being able to share and talk about our story. Because a lot of times people just go to church and you just sit there and you're listening, but you have these thoughts or you have these concepts that you want to ask questions or you want to get out and talk about, but you can't because it's a one mic show. And like you were talking about that, Danny, collaborating, talking, communicating, it should be a back and forth dialogue if possible sometimes. But when we shut everything out and we say, hey, this one up here at the pulpit, on stage, that's the voice of reason, and that's it. It's like it's really hard to then for men to connect to something that they're not able to voice their opinions out on too. And like I said, there's a big difference between men and women. Women are definitely they'll be able to receive it. They'll take it in. Men have to give it out. Kind of, this is sexually, this is how we are. But think about it. When men are asking, you're asking men to take it in, but we can't give it out. We can't give it out, and that's the problem. Why we are a lot of men keep it in. It's like, forget it. Don't nobody want to hear nothing anyways. Every time I go somewhere else or whatnot, everybody just talking. Don't nobody want to hear my story. Don't nobody want to say anything. And sometimes it even gets that way in prison, where not trying to work with people, you're pulling teeth. You got to pull teeth because all these years, everybody's been talking at you. You've never been ever to have the mic ever in your life. So that's a concept of especially collaborating and communicating and being a community for us all to talk to, for us all to have a voice is extremely important. Extremely important.
So I'm glad you said that, because you're right. We do need to have an outlet. We can't just be receivers. We're givers by nature. Providers. It's all, there's an action verb behind it, and listening isn't always an action. It's a kind of reception. But what if the church was to provide that space, or the construct of church was to provide that space? Would we show up more to those just listen only sessions? Or at this point, with the evolution of man, and the fact that our needs have changed, we're a little more vocal. We probably can't hold it in as long as we've used to being able to hold it. That now we that just sitting is just never going to be an option. It's always going to be, because for me, honestly, like Sabbath school is probably the best part of church, because it does have that interactive function. I remember going to a Jehovah's Witnesses event, and what I thought was interesting at the hall, at the Kingdom Hall.
Out our church.
You better not say church.
I remember sitting in the audience, and the speaker was up speaking, but people in the audience could raise their hand and be acknowledged to ask. And I was like, man, this is cool. Why can't we do this at my home church? And I was told,
you get put out. Trust me. And I honestly just had a question, and I thought we could ask questions. So,
how'd you ask the question though?
And I've done it at a couple of different churches, and some people saw it as threatening. And I really wasn't trying to be facetious. I really wasn't trying to start an argument, but I had a question based on what he said. It contradicted itself. So I just wanted to know. I wanted some clarity, and he got upset and asked me to leave.
And some things just don't make sense. You need to ask questions like, really? Okay, so this man got mad that these little boys was calling him bald and prayed, and God sent some bears down to kill everybody. Really? You want to ask those questions. And you should be able to ask your leaders these questions. But sometimes, again, our leaders don't really know what it is that they really.
And we're honest about all. Some of them are self-proclaimed, and they put themselves in these positions, and they haven't done
self-proclaimed.
Some of them have not studied to show themselves approved. So some people just wake up and say, "I feel I'm called to be in ministry," and there's no study
after being a pimp.
Right. You're good at convincing people to give you money, but you don't know biblical principle or theology. So when you're questioned, it feels threatening. And when the ladies, you can kind of circle around them, because I see this happen with some of these guys. The men, part of the reason we stopped going is, like you said earlier, Steve, when we see through the BS, it's like, I'm not going to go there, because I see that's Pimp John. And Pimp John he's still Pimp John. And I want to believe that he's going to reform, and I'll wait and see. I'll wait and see if Pimp John going to get it together. And if he does, I'm cool going to his church. Like, I don't judge anybody. I didn't, but even because we had this whole thing with Snoop, Kanye, and everybody was doing gospel albums for some reason.
I don't judge. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know what they've been through. But all I ask is, after the sales were made, are they still living the principle? Exactly. And I don't know. They could come back to it. I don't know. But from what I've seen,
exactly.
I'm not saying it wasn't sincere, but I couldn't get all excited about it. Like, oh my goodness, Kanye's doing gospel now. I can't. great, but you know, I got to ask where, you know, if I'm going to follow a person, I got to know where their intentions are. Where are you leading me, bro?
But what other community does that though? What other community, like when you talk, what we the only people that we got a hardcore gangster, then we doing right. I mean, then we doing gospel. Then we go back to what other community but us do that? Let me know. I might be wrong. Let me know.
I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's somebody.
Let me know.
So what happens? And it's not even a starting thing that, you know, say you've been taught, like I'll say this. When I went to the current church that I'm in, I don't want to give their name. One of the leaders who was no longer there had talked about, you know, how in the, I think it was Revelations, you know, it talked about, you know, you being neither hot nor cold. And I feel like, okay, so I don't want to be lukewarm. You know, lukewarm is bad. But what he said was that he was taught that, you know, you should either be hot or cold. There wasn't, you know, but in reality, both had some healing properties. Cooling was, you know, refreshing, where heat was more of a healing, and said that the people in the church need to be either, some people need to be hot, some people need to be cold. And I was like, oh man. But the fact that he came out and said, hey, I've been taught this way, I've come to realize it was wrong, I apologize to you all. I was like, whoa, let me find out somebody can
Where they do that at?
Well, I mean, if you're in Maryland,
it's the same pastor who also gave he taught the same story about the woman with the issue of blood, and he apologized for that too. Because he said, I was taught that, you know, this woman had to push her way through all these people, like the dramatic story that we've all been taught. But then he said when he found out how it actually worked out, it wasn't, he said when he was taught something differently, he had to come back and reteach it, and he had to apologize for how he taught it because he learned that it wasn't accurate.
I know the leaders now, some people now, they are more open to being questioned than back in the day. Back in the day, it's like, I'm behind this mic. I'm the leader of this flock.
Are we?
You don't ask me no question.
They got to now because ain't nobody going to church. They need something.
Are we okay with the pastor telling us, I don't know? Like if we ask a question and he genuinely says, you know, that's a good question, I don't know.
Keith, I don't know because that's never happened. I don't know.
Would you say, Danny?
Can you hear Danny? Are you?
No, I was saying I've had people say that, and to me, I respect them even more.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I don't know, and it's like I can bang with that.
Yeah.
Like the know-it-all who has all the answers, you don't really know. You can't really identify. Every major character in the Bible questioned God, even Jesus. Why have you
Why have you forsaken me? If there's any way, let
from
me.
From Adam to Jesus. Then Adam says something like, well, why you mad at me? You made her.
This garden with this woman.
You made her. This woman you made.
So I think it's normal for us to have questions, and I think it's normal for us to just say, hey, you know what? I really don't know. Let me just sit with you. Let me just have the ministry of presence. Let me just
But to do that would then mean I'm vulnerable to let you know I'm human.
Yes.
I was gonna say there's a humility of being human.
And that's connected outside of what we call church. That happens when we're having conversations, sharing a meal, at a basketball game, headed to a park or a men's event. That is church. Church happens on Tuesday, on Thursday, on Monday. Church isn't just on the weekend.
Tell them unlock them doors and let us in during the week.
Yeah, but we don't get doors.
We
got
don't.
my house. You come to me, we'll sit down and break some bread. We'll sit down and talk entrepreneurship. We'll sit down and talk parenting. We'll sit down and talk, about the trauma and pain of the past. What I found is vulnerability begets vulnerability. And so why I went back to that verse, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimonies. As you start talking about your imperfections and where you used to have been, and I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace, sweet, how sweet the sound to save the wretch like me. It's then that you can relate to people. It's then that you can talk to people. It's then that you can show grace to other people instead of pretending like you are holy and stuff. That's just my
and that falls true to even thinking about, even the profession that I'm in, even in therapy. It's been a lot of times where a lot of times people come to therapists and say, "Do you have all the? Do you have this answer? Do you have that answer?" A lot of times I tell them, "Hey, guess what? My job really is not to give you answers; it's to pull answers out of you that you already have." And sometimes, guess what? I don't have the answers. That's why I love being able to practice independently, because we're able to then talk about religion, spirituality, your faith. Because what I've been finding out, and I've been telling people, you know what? A lot of this, I can tell you all these theoretical theories, all this stuff, and all these mountains, years I went to school to study all these things, and that's good, and that's fine and dandy. But you know what? A good 40% of this is going to be is you talking to God and getting God to, asking God for, hey, can you open my eyes? Can you open my ears to what you want to see me do? So a lot of times I'm telling people, hey, don't really look for me for answers. If you have faith and if you have a religion, you need to integrate that back into your life, even in the times that you were having, strife and complication and chaos. Ask God to open your eyes or open your ears, and what he's trying to get you to understand about yourself in this situation, as well as what is God trying to tell you about this situation. And 9 times out of 10, guess what? They say, you know what? That helps, because I have God in my corner all the time, not just, hey, you know what? We're logging into a session for the therapist. Now no, God is the best therapist out of all therapists, but you got to ask him, you got to ask him, hey, give me some discernment, open my eyes, open my ears, help me to stop talking, help me to hear. It has to come from that source first. So, I'm glad that I'm able to tell people that, but sometimes people don't want to hear that.
They don't.
They want some hardcore facts, but then sometimes you say, well, the reason why things are, sometimes you have a lot of people that have a lot of success and they're doing really well in life and they still feel a certain way. They still feel depressed. It's always something missing.
Yep.
And I think Tom Brady said that I think he did like a 60 minutes interview one time after, I can't remember which Super Bowl he won or what. He said, I won it, but
all
I still feel a certain way.
Married
don't mean nothing. Yeah, it don't mean nothing. Because it can all be taken away.
Yeah.
It can all be taken away.
Or it's just not as fulfilling as most people think.
Yep. And that's where that other percentage of, you got to get to have that relationship with God. You got to.
You have to. Ain't no way. No, I usually, when they ask me that question, aren't you going to solve all my problems or tell me what I need to do? I'm like, my crystal ball does not, my magic wand.
Sure don't.
They
ain't paying that much.
Right. No, I don't, that's God, I'm here to facilitate. That's what I tell them. What did God say? Because that's what I'm here to facilitate. I'm not here to come figure it out for you. You have to do that part, and I have to help. Then I will help you facilitate that. So, I along the way. But in any case, yeah, it's.
Well, I mean, this has been this conversation went where I wanted it to go, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. And I appreciate, just what y'all have said, the insight, but as we always like to wrap things up, it's hard. We could probably do this for hours. Just talk about anything, everything, and all things in between. But what y'all have any parting words? As I try to cue up the outro music, I'm not going to put up the graphic. I want people to see your faces as the stuff is going on. Any parting words or thoughts?
I just want to reiterate, for me, like, study the book of Acts. If you want to know what church, if you got a problem with church, if you go to the book of Acts, you'll see that God probably does too, because he has a system. He's got a structure that he created, and that's church. And so don't be mad at what is not church. go back to the word and understand what God originally designed and intended, and search for a place or create that space where you have that.
Right.
We are
That's
the
true.
That is true. That is true. I was going to say something along those lines, so I'll just piggyback and jump in here. To you men's, stop waiting for the church to create something for you. Go down to your church, walk in there, ask to speak to somebody and tell them, I want to serve. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how I want to serve yet, but I want to participate. I want to get out here and be active. I know people who are doing parking lot ministry and they love it. And all they do is help people park their cars every Sunday. So listen, stop waiting for somebody to invite you down and beg you to participate. You tired of sitting on the sideline. Get up and put yourself in a situation where you can meet the people, so you can be a part of the things outside of the church, outside of the four walls. So, but you can't do it by sitting on your couch judging everybody. Lastly, church hurt is real. It does happen, but just like with anything, with work, with school, I got family hurt. My kids drive me crazy. I can't just quit them because they get on my nerves. Sometimes in these environments, you're gonna have stress and strife. You can't just leave because it gets hard. So that's what that's all. I'm gonna put a pin in it there and let Steve take over.
I definitely want to say to our men, to let them know it's okay to talk about God. It's okay. It's fine. You know, don't regardless of what society tells you, you keep certain things hush hush or taboo. No, it's okay to talk about God. It's okay to talk about your faith. It's okay to question things. You know, as much as we talk about sports, football, basketball, stats, you know, people's stats that not even alive anymore. You know, all these stats. Be able to talk to people about God too, because that's that's the most important stat that you need to be talking about.
True.
So I'll leave it at that.
And since no one mentioned the ladies, try to use my deep voice. If your man comes up to you and he has some questions about God, or you ask him about church, and he may say that he doesn't want to go, it's okay to ask why. Just be prepared when he says why. If you don't understand, just the fact that he's willing to communicate that feeling, that thought, know that is that is him opening up, being vulnerable, and saying, hey, we can talk about this, but just make sure that you give him the time and the space and the place in order to say what's on his mind. Sometimes it might be an experience that he had that had nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the person
Exactly.
behind the pulpit. And there other times it just might be an opportunity where he's just trying to figure out where he fits in. And you being his best friend, his mate, his helpmate, that's an opportunity for you to support him. It's okay to question, but just don't put him in a place where he closes up, because it may be a long time till he's willing to open up to you again about religion, because religion really is an intimate conversation. It's like sex. It's an intimate conversation. So yeah.
Cool. That's it. Go ahead.
Well, what you say? Say that again.
I just said stop shaming people. It don't work.
All right, so we ending with that. I play this outro. You're gonna see our faces. As always, Iron Table, where iron sharpens iron, men sharpens men. We don't own any rights to anything, but we do acknowledge the gifts of others. Well, it's closing time. We are glad you stayed with us this long. The bill? Oh, we tore that up. For truth and accountability are free. You want to leave a tip? Sure, we take your money, but what's even better is if you share this with someone you know, for there's always room for more at the Iron Table.